Welcome back to our channel. Today is a truly spectacular day to dive deep into the latest heart-stopping drama unfolding in Port Charles. We have an absolutely massive amount of tension, betrayal, and explosive narrative turns to unpack together. So let's get right into the heart of the action. I am absolutely buzzing with pure, unadulterated adrenaline after witnessing that explosive confrontation in Carly's attic. When Jack Brennan finally pushed open that door and locked his eyes on Valentin Cassadine standing right there in the flesh, my jaw actually dropped. I felt so incredibly thrilled by the sheer suffocating tension in the room because to me, it finally proved that the writers know exactly what they're doing with this complex, high-stakes love triangle. The exact moment Brennan realized he wasn't the master manipulator he always believed himself to be, but rather a mere pawn in Carly's grand scheme to save Jocelyn from the WSB, the atmosphere shifted so violently that I could barely catch my breath. I think the choice to have Brennan discover Valentin hiding there rather than finding a cryptic clue or hearing a passing rumor, was a masterstroke of daytime television writing that delivered an unforgettable payoff. I know a lot of people in the fandom have been loudly complaining that this storyline is dragging, arguing that Carly's romantic entanglement with Brennan, while secretly harboring Valentin, was taking entirely too long to reach its peak. But I actually think the slow burn is exactly what was needed, because I feel like the ultimate betrayal wouldn't have landed with such devastating, earth-shattering force if Brennan hadn't been completely, hopelessly smitten with her. The way I interpret it, Brennan's immense arrogance as a top-tier WSB director completely blinded him to the reality that Carly Corinthos is not a woman who can be easily tamed, distracted, or controlled by a handsome face and smooth words. When he looked her in the eye and called her the worst traitor he had ever met, I felt a massive rush of vindication for Carly. She played the ultimate high-stakes spy game against the ultimate spy, and she won the psychological battle, even if it ended up costing her physically. Let's talk about the slap, because we absolutely have to dissect that moment. I genuinely think we're missing the entire point of the narrative if we just view Brennan slapping Carly as a standard throwaway soap opera shock value moment. I believe it was a profound, terrifying snapping of his entire psyche. I felt genuinely chilled to the bone when his hand made contact with her face, not just because of the sudden violence, but because of what that action represented, the complete and total shattering of Jack Brennan's massive ego. He truly believed he had the absolute upper hand, that he was the one pulling all the strings in Carly's bedroom and in her daily life. To suddenly find out that every passionate encounter, every whispered promise, and every shared vulnerability was just a calculated, cold-blooded move to protect her daughter and hide a wanted fugitive. That slap was the physical manifestation of a powerful man whose entire carefully constructed worldview had just collapsed into dust. But what I love most about that scene, what made me literally jump up and cheer at my television screen, was Carly's immediate reaction. She didn't flinch. I feel like this is the absolute best they've written Carly in years. Because she didn't cower, she didn't cry, and she didn't offer a single word of apology. She stood incredibly tall, her eyes blazing with that signature, unstoppable Corinthos fire, and told him straight to his face that she would do absolutely anything to protect her family. The way I see it, Carly absorbing that hit and immediately throwing her fierce defiance back in his face is the very core of her character. She weaponized his own hurt feelings against him. And when she declared that her family was worth playing dangerous games with a lethal spy's heart, I felt a deep, profound respect for her terrifying maternal ferocity. I think the writer's choice to have Carly immediately pivot to blaming Brennan for Jocelyn's involvement in the WSB was brilliant, because it made me feel the full, crushing weight of a mother's desperation. Carly aggressively pointing her finger at Brennan and shouting that he was the one who brought Jocelyn into this dangerous, shadowy world was such a powerful, necessary turning point in their dynamic. I believe Carly has been carrying this immense, suffocating guilt and terror ever since Jocelyn started digging for answers about Ross Cullum and Caesar Faison. By throwing the blame squarely onto Brennan's shoulders, Carly wasn't just deflecting her own guilt. She was holding him entirely accountable for the mortal peril her daughter is now facing on a daily basis. I am completely obsessed with the lighting and the set design during this entire attic sequence. I love the way the lighting subtly changed, casting harsh, dramatic, almost noir-like shadows across Brennan's face when he realized Valentin was standing right there in the dim light. It made the attic feel incredibly claustrophobic, like a dangerous pressure cooker that had finally inevitably exploded. When Brennan looked back and forth from Valentin to Carly, the tight, shaky camera angles made me feel like I was physically trapped in that room with them, suffocating under the heavy weight of Carly's massive multi-layered deception. I feel like the director perfectly captured the terrifying transition of Jack Brennan from a suave, confident lover to a cornered, vicious, and unpredictable animal. And we absolutely have to talk about Valentin's role in this explosive scene. Even though the dialogue focus was heavily on Carly and Brennan, Valentin's looming presence in the background was utterly electrifying. I think Valentin's silent, calculating observation of the violent confrontation spoke volumes about his current state of mind. The way I interpret it, Valentin was experiencing a chaotic, agonizing mix of intense jealousy and deep, reverent admiration. He has been begging Carly for weeks to use Nina to take down Brennan, constantly warning her that keeping Brennan this close was a fatal mistake. Seeing Brennan physically strike the woman he loves must have taken every single ounce of Valentin's legendary restraint not to step forward and kill him on the spot. I feel so deeply invested in Valentin's internal struggle here, watching the woman he adores take a hit for a plan he fundamentally disagreed with. I know some viewers are currently criticizing Carly on social media for being too cruel to Brennan, arguing that no one deserves to have their heart used and discarded in such a brutal, calculated way. But I actually think Carly's unapologetic ruthlessness is exactly what makes her such a phenomenal, compelling protagonist right now. I feel like we are seeing a fierce mother bear who has been backed into the absolute tightest corner of her entire life. Her daughter is deeply entangled with a lethal intelligence agency, and her best friend, Jason Morgan, is sitting in a cold WSB cell taking the fall for Rocco Falconeri. The way I see it, Carly simply didn't have the luxury of playing fair with Brennan's emotions. I think her sharp, biting dialogue perfectly backed up my take when she hissed that she would toy with his heart 1,000 times over if it meant keeping Jocelyn breathing and safe. Brennan's retaliation in this scene was nothing short of terrifying, and I'm entirely here for every single second of his dark, villainous descent. When he leaned in close to Carly, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper and vowed to make her pay, I got absolute undeniable chills down my spine. I believe Brennan is at his absolute most dangerous when his pride is deeply wounded. He didn't just threaten her physical life, he threatened the very pillars of her sanity and her heart. I think his dark promise to destroy Valentin is going to set up an epic blood-soaked cat-and-mouse game between the two men. Brennan now knows exactly where Valentin has been hiding, and I feel like the upcoming episodes are going to be an absolute war zone, as Brennan uses all his vast WSB resources to hunt Valentin down and eliminate him. But Brennan didn't stop at just threatening Valentin. That's exactly what makes his vengeance so deliciously, horrifyingly wicked. I was genuinely horrified in the absolute best way possible for a drama fan when he vowed to completely ruin any hope Carly had of saving Jason Morgan. I think this specific targeted threat hit Carly much harder than the physical slap ever could. The way I interpret it, Brennan knows perfectly well that Jason is Carly's ultimate enduring weak spot. By promising to ensure Jason rots in WSB custody for a crime he didn't commit, Brennan is maliciously twisting the knife in her deepest wound. I feel like the writers are brilliantly weaving the Ross Cullum shooting on the pier into this intense attic drama, connecting all the separate lingering narrative threads into one massive, high-stakes, explosive storyline that affects everyone. And then came the final devastating nail in the coffin, Brennan's cold vow to keep Jocelyn permanently trapped in the WSB. I think this is the most vindictive, psychologically manipulative thing he could have possibly said in that moment. I feel like Brennan knows that Carly's entire motivation for this elaborate charade, the lies, the seduction, the risk was solely to buy Jocelyn's freedom from the agency. By declaring that Jocelyn will never ever escape the WSB's grasp, Brennan is essentially telling Carly that her grand sacrifice, her betrayal, and her physical pain were all for absolutely nothing. The way I see it, Brennan is using Jocelyn as the ultimate unbreakable leverage, and it makes me so incredibly excited to see how Carly is going to counter this seemingly impossible, terrifying threat. I genuinely think we're missing the point of daytime television if we don't take a moment to appreciate the sheer acting masterclass delivered by these three performers in this single room. The tiny micro expressions on Jack Brennan's face, the slight twitch of his jaw, the cold, vacant deadness that entered his eyes immediately after the slap were simply phenomenal to witness. I believe the actor truly conveyed the profound heartbreak of a man who genuinely thought he had found an equal, passionate partner, only to realize he was just a convenient stepping stone. I feel like the brief flash of vulnerability he showed right before the blinding anger took over and made his subsequent cruelty so much more impactful and scary. It wasn't just WSB business to him. It was deeply agonizingly personal. I also want to heavily praise how this specific scene fundamentally shifts the entire power dynamic in Port Charles moving forward. For weeks now, I feel like Carly has been nervously walking a frayed tightrope, desperately trying to manage Valentin's intense jealousy and Brennan's growing affections without falling. Now, that tightrope has completely snapped. I think the writer's bold choice to force everything out into the open in the most violent and emotional way possible, is going to inject a massive, much needed dose of adrenaline into the upcoming May sweeps. I feel so incredibly relieved that the secret is finally out, because now we get to see Carly operate not in the anxious shadows, but in open, unapologetic warfare. The way I interpret her final defiant glare at Brennan, she is no longer playing defense. She is preparing to go on the absolute scorched earth offensive. Let's take a moment to analyze how this explosive attic scene impacts the broader canvas of the show. With Brennan now actively, fiercely working against Carly, the stakes for Jocelyn's current reckless investigation into Ross Cullum are astronomically higher. I think Brennan is absolutely going to use Cullum's ruthless nature to his own advantage. If Cullum remembers Jocelyn from his time in the ICU, I feel like Brennan won't lift a single finger to protect her anymore. In fact, I believe he might actively feed her to the wolves just to teach Carly a permanent, agonizing lesson about betrayal. This deeply interconnected storytelling is exactly why I'm so fiercely loyal to this show right now. Every single action has a devastating ripple effect consequence that touches every corner of the town. I know some fans are deeply worried that this confrontation means the end of the Carly and Valentin romance, fearing that the stress will tear them apart. But I actually think this crucible is going to forge them into an absolutely unbreakable team. I feel like Valentin witnessing Carly take a literal physical hit to protect their alliance, and her family is going to completely solidify his undying devotion to her. The way I see it, Valentin is a man who respects survival, loyalty, and ruthlessness above all else. Seeing Carly stand up to the powerful head of the WSB and declare her unapologetic loyalty to her blood is exactly the kind of fierce fire Valentin is magnetically drawn to. I believe they are going to emerge from this dusty attic, not as two terrified people hiding from the world, but as a united, lethal front ready to burn Brennan's entire empire to the ground. Ultimately, this unforgettable scene in the attic is a masterclass in character-driven drama that rewards longtime viewers. I feel so incredibly grateful to the writers for trusting these characters' rich histories and complex motivations. Carly's fierce maternal instincts, Brennan's fragile, dangerous ego, and Valentin's lethal, silent devotion all collided in one perfect explosive moment that changes everything. I think the decision to have Carly aggressively blame Brennan for Jocelyn's WSB ties is the brilliant narrative glue that holds this entire conflict together. It's not just a soapy story about who is sleeping with who. It's about life, death, and the terrifying lengths a mother will go to protect her child. I cannot wait to see how Carly retaliates, and I firmly believe that Jack Brennan has absolutely no idea the hellfire he just unleashed by striking Carly Corinthos.